This has been a massive video. We're going to watch it.
Today we talk about the fall of Ubisoft. Look,
Watch it
I don't
over-
like
yeah.
to hold my tongue. I like to speak my mind. And from my perspective, when I see a company that has failed to deliver quality to their customers,
So
that
this is all about
completely ignored
Ubisoft.
any criticism, whether that's from the industry
Watch
itself,
watch a guy
critics, or their
reacting, and I'm
fans,
reacting to it.
they get what they deserve.
What a
In the
fucking
case of
tunnel.
Ubisoft, this is a victory for consumers. This is exactly what we want to see, because if you're not working for us, you're working against us, and that's
Yes.
what they've been doing for years. So when you're a company that's as recognized as Ubisoft, one of the most recognizable names
It's a
in
good
all
video.
of gaming, they're a
Yeah.
cornerstone of AAA, you're going to have some ups and downs, but over the last few years, they've had a lot of downs. They've been digging a grave that I don't think that they can escape. Lacking.
I don't know if they can either, honestly. Because the problem is that the company's reputation is damaged. And if you compare this to, let's say, like Blizzard's reputation is damaged, and that is like, it's so harmful. I don't think people respect and put enough value on the importance of reputation. Because if you don't have that reputation and it ends up like, you know, getting away from you and you lose the narrative, you are in a very, very bad situation. At least 4 years to recover the reputation? No, I think it's 10 years. I think you need to have like at least 5 and usually 10 years to rebuild your
So it's
reputation.
like that.
Like, think about companies that have done it. It takes years and years and years.
Quality, repetitive games, lack in player interest, controversy. Now their own
That's pretty
investors
big.
are calling for their leadership to be ousted and for the company to be sold.
Which is
How do you
crazy.
get yourself to that point?
All right.
That's what
Let's
I want
find
to
out.
I was just checking on it, make sure it was big enough
There's
for
a lot of
y'all.
other companies that are traveling this road to ruin, and I want this to be a lesson to all.
I think he's also right that a lot of companies are trying to do what Ubisoft does because they just want to make more and more products to make more and more money. That's the reason. It's that simple. And you're seeing a lot of Western companies do this primarily.
So let's talk about the rise and
Oh,
fall
okay, B.
of Ubisoft. As of recording this video, Ubisoft stock just hit a low that they haven't seen in over a decade. Their stock prices
The funny thing is
Felt-
now it's even lower. Like, let me see if I can I find it? No, it's not on here
Probably
anymore.
not.
Yeah, it's like this was from like a week ago or a few days ago. So like now it's even worse than it was in this video.
almost 84% over the past few years, and with recent releases like
High,
Skull
low,
and Bones,
so lower.
Assassin's Creed Mirage, X Defiant, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, Star Wars Outlaws, and the upcoming Assassin's Creed Black Shadows, nothing seems to be able to pull them out of this death spiral. And no matter how many games they
So-
release in quick succession,
They haven't
Well, think about
put
how
out a
many
good
games
game
they
in a
just
while.
listed off. Like that was
Like a
7
legitimately
games
good
or
game.
something like that. Of course they're like, I mean, it's just you're spread so thin. What do you expect?
when a company releases 6 games over the course of a couple years, that's usually the sign of success.
yeah.
But in the case of Ubisoft, each release seems to be taking them one step closer towards the brink of collapse.
I don't think that's an example of success at all. The only games that bring out 6 games in a the only companies that bring out 6 games in a year are mobile game slot companies. Nobody's bringing out 6 games in a year. Who the fuck does that? Yeah, there's no way.
So how did this happen? Why did this happen? How does a cornerstone of the AAA industry
so
I don't
fall
think
this
even
far
Capcom
from
does.
grace?
And if they
Well,
do,
to
it's a
answer
remaster.
that-
Sorry for slurping, but I just got finished with I made a peanut butter banana milkshake. Oh my god, it was so good. Super easy. Just froze 3 for this one 4 bananas. I think I put like a half a cup of peanut butter and a little bit of milk, blended it up. Oh, so creamy, so smooth. Oh, so nice.
We need to go back and look to where Ubisoft came from, where it peaked, and where it fell. Ubisoft, like many developers, cut
It's the
their
original
teeth on
Prince of
PC
Persia.
games in the late 80s. A game company initially started by the 5 Guillemot brothers, who still own and operate the company today, initially focused on games distribution as they slowly moved into games development. Titles like Zombie, Prince of Persia, and a few others helped them to gain a foothold, but it wasn't until 1995 that the company would make a name for itself. Rayman exploded
Oh,
onto the
yeah.
scene, a game using interactive and
That's a
creative
fun one.
puzzle and platforming
Yeah, this is from
mechanics
back in
that
the
we hadn't
day.
even
Yeah, this
seen
shit was fun to
before.
sell.
It sold over 400,000 units.
That
by
wasn't
the end
a
of the
Super
year,
Nintendo, was it? I
becoming the
think
most
that was
popular thing in
PlayStation.
Europe and cementing
I think that's
itself into
PlayStation.
the
Matter of fact,
industry.
I know for a
Following
fact it's like
success and
PlayStation or
rapid expansion, by the year
64.
2000, Ubisoft saw exponential growth on their publishing side with major victories on the Dreamcast, with titles like Grandia 2, my favorite JRPG of all time,
I
Tokyo.
feel like the Dreamcast was like fucking like who the fuck did any of you guys have a Dreamcast? Because like
A
am I
buddy of
the only
mine
one,
owned a
like, my mom wouldn't
Dreamcast.
buy me one because of how expensive it was. Dreamcast was like
Yeah, it was
crazy
insane.
overpriced.
It's like the most modded
Ubisoft
console on the
had
planet
Racing
too. You can
Championship
mod
and
anything,
Taxi 2. However, it was on
or
the PlayStation
still
2 that
games or
Ubisoft
whatever.
would find its identity. Well, they were still publishing great games like FromSoft's Armored Core 2 and
Yeah.
Eternal Ring and Snowblind Studios' Champions of Norath. It was during this time that Ubisoft acquired the license to use Tom Clancy's stories and name in
Ooh.
a series of games with Tom Clancy's Ghost
Yep.
Recon and later Splinter Cell taking
yep.
the stage. After this, Ubisoft went on a blitz with original titles, quickly rolling out sequel after sequel. Splinter Cell kicked it off in 2003 with Pandora Tomorrow in 2004, Chaos Theory in 2005, Double Agent in 2006.
Yeah,
Those-
like I remember these games. You guys like these games were like as big as COD. Like Splinter Cell was massive. I
Absolutely.
never. What's
Splinter
funny is,
Cell's
like,
so much
I never
fun.
Even really liked
Fuck, I
Splinter
love
Cell that
Cell.
much because it was a
Double
stealth
Agent,
game.
best
I
game.
like shooting.
Holy shit,
games
especially the
like
online
stuff
mode.
like that.
Oh my
But
god,
yeah,
it's
they were
fucking phenomenal.
massive.
Ghost Recon launched in 2002. It had a sequel in 2004, a next version of it with Advanced Warfighter in 2006, Advanced Warfighter 2 in 2007, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time came out in 2003, and yep, just like the others, it saw rapid follow-ups with Warrior Within in 2004
Yeah.
and Two Thrones in 2005.
It was crazy to see like some of those old games that have better gameplay than what we have now. It's actually nuts. I don't know how that happens.
On the mid-2000s, Ubisoft must have realized that this rapid pace was not sustainable, and it started to affect the quality of
Yeah.
their games. Later releases took longer. The next Prince of Persia game didn't appear until 2008, and it took 4 years to develop the next Far Cry game from the original that came out in 2004.
Man, I
Despite
fucking
this
love having
intense
a bet.
schedule, Ubisoft was holding its own against rivals in Activision with
Yeah.
its military shooters and competing against Konami's Metal Gear Solid through Splinter Cell.
Why did they stop making military games? Do they still make military games? I feel like they don't as much, right? Because of COD.
Some really good weather legs.
Do they make COD? I don't think that Ubisoft makes Call of Duty. Activision makes Call of Duty. It's too controversial. They make yeah, I guess they make Rainbow Six. Yeah, okay, all right, they still have that.
Sus.
Isn't that the game that they're adding
Well,
in a person in a wheelchair? They're adding in a person in a wheelchair
mean,
to
it's
Rainbow
worth a-
Six. I'll be right back.
29.
This shit ain't the military anymore. Yeah, because it's like, you know, if you go in the military, like
Yeah, here we are. Let's get rid of that.
it's just. What's that?
Oh, that one's worth 30?
Like, it's
Come on,
just-
something
it's-
zero's not
it's
worth 30.
so
Yeah, get the fuck out of my
stupid.
inventory.
Like, how do you even do that? I'll be right back.
And
Regardless of their
6.
success in
Okay.
publishing, developing licensed IPs, and military shooters, it was the release of Assassin's Creed in 2007 that set Ubisoft into orbit. And it
Yeah,
bridged the
this
gap.
game, like, this game was the fucking, like, I remember I never played the original one, but I would see it all the time. Like, if you go to GameStop or something like that back in the day, it was everywhere.
Oh my god, I miss so many
Oh, and I can
attacks.
play myself as Rainbow Six. What? Yeah, exactly. But like, yeah, I mean, this is. I feel like Assassin's Creed is probably the one that Ubisoft is known the most for right now. I would say.
With a title that appealed to audiences worldwide. There was nothing like it in the market at the time. This game was an enigma. It was far and away the best looking game on consoles. Its fluid movement, parkour, and combat felt alien. Its setting of reliving our ancestors' memories while we chase a relic to try to stop the shadow government Templars was fresh and original. Assassin's Creed defined modern
Assassin's
gaming
Creed
at
was
the
a lot of
time,
fun.
and it made Ubisoft
I only played like the
household name.
first two, and I think I played
Ubisoft was
Brotherhood.
everywhere at this
Will
time.
you
You'd be
shoot?
hard-pressed to
Jesus.
Turn on your console or turn on your PC and see that logo pop up. And it wasn't just the games that they were making; it was the games that they were publishing. They had
Why?
such a
Oh, I
good
forgot
eye
it's
for
bugged.
talent, such a
That's a
good eye
bug.
for great games. And as a result, they made a ton of money. I mean, they published Morrowind. I didn't even know that. I was going through some of the history of all the different.
So let's talk about it real quick. So this right here, so you use Aspect of the Wolf where you can only use melee. Then you switch it back to Aspect of the Hawk. If you just switch back to Hawk and you pull out your rifle, the rifle will only use spells and it won't actually shoot. It's only shooting out spells, but its auto fire just won't work. Normally, when you press 3, it will automatically do auto fire, but then it won't. So I have to like casually push this every now and then. I keep forgetting about it. All right, back to the video.
Games
What?
that they had published over the years.
Yeah, I
and was
didn't know
sitting
that
back
either.
going like, man, these guys are raking in
What the
cash
fuck?
at the time. But it wasn't just those games as well. It was also the successes that they were seeing with the games that they were making. They had such a fresh and
How do you do that? Like, that's crazy for me to think of because, like, they published Devil May Cry 3 too.
That's still recharging.
the fuck happened? That's crazy. Like, how? I don't even understand. Like, that's
That
unbelievable.
fucking sucked.
High quality outlook on all the games that they were creating. They were really leaning into presentation more than anything else. They wanted to make sure that their games just looked the best, hands down, bar none, no competition. And they pulled it off. Advanced Warfighter 1 and 2 were some of my favorite shooters of all time, even kind of more than some of the Call of Duty games at the time. They're likely the games that ended up inspiring Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 and 2. You look at Splinter Cell and Metal Gear Solid, they leaned really hard into the stealth aspects, the spy aspects of those kind of games, and as a result, they found their own following and gave a really unique experience that you weren't getting from the Metal Gear Solid games.
Right.
While the narrative wasn't nearly as strong, it was still pretty good, but the gameplay was completely different. Then you bring out Assassin's Creed, and that just took their quality to a completely different level. At this point, with Ubisoft, if you're buying one of their games, 9 times out of 10, you were going to have your socks knocked off. They were incredible experiences. And Ubisoft...
I remember being excited for them every time.
And they profited.
Fuck.
Following the release of Assassin's Creed...
It's crazy to see how popular they used to be. Like, I feel like I really kind of downplayed how big Ubisoft was. I didn't understand how many other games they also published. That's incredible. Like, yeah, old games were good, yeah.
2007, Ubisoft entered into a golden era that solidified their place as one of the leaders in the
I'm
AAA
full.
industry. The success
man.
of Assassin's Creed was not just a one-off hit. It became a
just stick
flagship
around these
franchise that
fuckers.
grew in scope and ambition with each installment. Assassin's Creed 2 in 2009
Like, I'm not
expanded
supposed to be
upon
here
the
yet.
original's foundations
These guys are a
with
lot
deeper
harder.
gameplay
And
mechanics.
it's also like in 2009. Okay, this isn't a very good image. But like if you look at the gameplay here, 2009,
Bro's 40.
that's really good graphics. Now, I think this is another component that people might forget is that like I know that like for Black Flag and a few other games that Ubisoft did, like their graphics for the time were like next level. They were really good.
Deeper gameplay mechanics, a more engaging narrative, and a charismatic protagonist in Ezio Auditore. Still the best protagonist in all of Assassin's Creed. The game was a commercial and critical success, selling over 9 million copies and becoming one of the
Such a
most
good
celebrated
game.
entries in the entire series. The success continued with Assassin's Creed Brotherhood in 2010 and Assassin's Creed Revelations in 2011. In combination with this, Ubisoft was experiencing major successes with their Far Cry series. Far Cry 3 in 2012 was a groundbreaking title that redefined open-world gaming. It introduced vast, explorable islands filled with diverse environments and a gripping story and one of the most memorable protagonists in all of gaming history. And I think that character shows just how far Ubisoft today has fallen from where they came from. No shot Ubisoft ever makes a villain like this again.
Sorry, what did you say? What did you say? Did you want me to slice you open like I did your friend? Shut the fuck up! Okay? I'm the one with the fucking dick. Look at me. Look me in the fucking eye. Hey! You fuck! Look me in the eye. You're my bitch. I rule this fucking kingdom.
Get the fuck out of here.
Far Cry 3 sold over
Man.
I'm too low level
So
for
they
this area.
actually just pussified their games. That's what I think it is. They pussified the games. That's what it was. Yeah.
I want to hear all that again. He was talking.
how far you ever makes a villain.
Did you want me to slice you open like I did your friend?
Oh yeah,
Shut the fuck up!
yeah, that's right.
Okay?
It's fucking
I'm the one
intense.
with the fucking dick. Look at me. Look me in the fucking eye. Hey! You fuck! Look me in the eye. You're my bitch. I rule this fucking kingdom.
God, so good.
Far Cry 3 sold over
That makes me want to play Far Cry
Man.
3 again.
So they actually just pussified their games.
Oh my god.
That's what I think it is. They pussified the games. That's what it was. Yeah, because like I watched this. Yeah. That's it. How's it good? Yeah. Goat villain of all time. Because like I compare this dialogue to the dialogue in Star Wars Outlaw. You know?
for 10 million
Ubisoft
copies
used
and
to
was
be
lauded
edgy.
as one of the best
Yeah.
games of the generation. setting a new benchmark for open-world shooters. The series continued to thrive with Far Cry 4 in 2014 and Far Cry 5 in 2018, each expanding on the franchise's formula with new mechanics and narratives. By 2018, Far Cry 5 became the fastest-selling title in Ubisoft's history, moving over 5 million copies within the first week, solidifying the franchise's place in history. In parallel with the success that they had going on with the Far Cry series, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six...
I feel like what really is poison for a lot of games is that when the game has like limits that it won't go to. And I think that's what happens with a lot of companies, is that like there's like an edge that the company has or the games have that then they kind of get afraid of. They're like, now we're afraid of this edge. And I feel like it was so crazy for me to play Cyberpunk 2077.
Right.
And then to have right before that played Starfield. Like,
right.
It was like two completely different experiences, right? And I feel like that's what's happened with a lot of these game companies, is that I don't even really know why, but so many of their games are just
36, 35.
classic.
Just keep that in mind.
They're just flat, like they're just like, there's no like, I don't know, like I'm trying to think even like what the word, they're soft, yeah, like they're soft, like everything is yeah, it's just I'm just trying to think like the best way to say it. Character soul, yeah, it's just weak. Like, yeah, the characters don't have any edge, they don't have any grit to them, they're not interesting. Hello. I don't know, they're one-dimensional. Yeah, they're politically correct for sure. I think that's a huge problem. Yeah, like I feel like, you know what a good example of this is? Like what game like really was a great example is the like Baldur's Gate 3 with like the bear sex scene, and then also the Coffin of Andy and Laylee. And I think that the reason why those games like got so much attention is because, like, completely different levels, by the way, obviously, but like the reason why they got a lot of attention is that if it's a game where you can kill and eat your parents, you can, like, you know that you are experiencing something that's not being artificially handicapped in terms of its narrative direction because the person that's writing it is afraid of offending the wrong person on Twitter. And I think that that's really where the weakness comes in. That's where the problem is. It's that people are self-censoring narratives and making them less complex and less interesting because that complexity and that interest makes certain people on the internet that are really outspoken like really upset and uncomfortable.
So I'm not eating your
Games
food.
have weak characters, mostly just agenda vehicles. Well, I feel like the problem is that whenever, and this is kind of like the issue, is that whenever you see, like, or like you perceive, I think this is also very important, whenever you perceive a agenda or like a certain reason that's political or social of why something is the way it is in a game, I think that the amount of escapism that you can have in that game goes down massively. Because now you are no longer playing a fantasy world. You are doing something
I really wish you'd
that
go
is
on
in
that.
the context of like a real
A lot might bore, but you do
So
more
agenda,
damage.
Yeah, it's immersion breaking. It's very immersion breaking.
Siege initially launched to a modest reception, but through consistent updates and community engagement, it has now grown into one of the most popular and enduring multiplayer shooters, even still today. By 2018, Rainbow Six Siege had amassed over 30 million players.
Thank you, Jinxie.
Tom Clancy's The Division in 2016 was another major hit, offering a compelling blend of third-person shooting
I like
and RPG.
Rainbow Six
that
New
set
Vegas,
in a
man.
post-apocalyptic
Oh
world.
my god, and New
It was
Vegas
Ubisoft's
2, I played the
fastest-selling
fuck
new
out of that
IP
game.
at launch, earning
To me, that was a better
$350
version of
million in
Counter-Strike.
sales with
I kid you not. Like, New Vegas 2, if you've ever played it, I played a ton of Counter-Strike. And dude, New Vegas 2, to me, was just a far superior version. Very close, you could come through the windows, a lot of strategic ways to enter a site. Fucking put your back up against the wall. And just shoot around the corner, like... It was so good in that respect. You could patch your armor a certain way. So you could be really light, which is one thing I really liked. So let's say you just want to be really lightly armored. You could move really fast, like, or you could be like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna put armor on my right side. on my like right shoulder and right leg, and that's it. Or depending on how your character stance is. So mine was stance left, so that's where I put like most of my armor was on the left side because that's the side that would be showing, and like so that way I had this like really somewhat tanky build, and I can peek around walls, and that's the shoulder that's showing out and shit. Like you can also like have your showing shoulder have more armor. I don't think there's. I think headshots just did headshot things like most games, but I don't remember it being too brutal. Is this the right ship? I think it is. If not, I'm kind of high. We'll find out. Anyway.
In the first week,
Jesus.
it showcased Ubisoft's ability to successfully launch a new IP while still being able to maintain their existing franchises. If we take a snapshot of the successes from 2000 to 2018, we see...
I'm already here. Actually, Booty Bay will be pretty quick, too.
Really, like, I actually had no idea about this. This is nuts.
You can also fly to the wetlands.
On high quality experiences while
Oh, that boat. Yeah, fly to the wetlands on that boat. That is way quicker. Never mind. I finally remembered.
At the same time, we also see a
far less of the continent to travel.
See a game becomes successful, they hammer that nail again and again and again. Sometimes within such quick succession that we're seeing sequels with games within year to year to year to year,
Exactly.
back to back to back, and then they stop. And that's going to take a toll, not only on the developers, but also on the audiences.
Well, and it's also like another component of this is that as video games have become more expensive and people have become more conscious of the money they're spending, I think that you see a lot less people that are willing to spend a lot of money on games.
True.
Because, like, again, whenever you were playing...
Took me forever to buy fucking Elden Ring.
Like, you know, you get a new game for $50, and it's like every once in a while you buy one of those, it's okay. But now, I feel like people are much more money conscious because of how many...
Money conscious and time conscious.
So, it's obvious that we're growing? Yeah, exactly. Ubisoft got to a...
Because, like, there's... one thing I would say is time conscious, because... games, like this one, Turtle Wow, for example. This game, it's an older fucking game, man. I'm not even playing new content. I'm not playing shit that's been replayed a billion fucking times over. Like, I've already played this before. Now, the one thing that I didn't really get to, I'm not thinking straight I'm talking, but one thing I didn't really get to when I was a kid is that I never got to play this as far as classic goes. I never got to be at that point. And when I finally became like adult, when I was first introduced to this game, I played Wrath of the Lich King. But so like I level through here, but I didn't get to do any of the raids. That's one thing I'm like, dude, this content I have not explored yet. I haven't done any of these raids yet. That's not completely true, because I think in Wrath of the Lich King or Cataclysm you go back and play the raids, or you're just high enough level to go back and play the raids. But that's not the fun way to play a raid. And I now want to raid. And, you know, so we're going to go raid. And I kind of like how Turtle Wild servers are set up. So, anyway, that's kind of like one of my goals. I'm hoping, say, by sometime before the end of this year, I'd like to start doing some raids. I do play a lot of other games, though. That's what I'm saying. I have so many other games I want to play. And this one, like, wow, like, declares a lot of your fucking time. So practically a part-time job, you know, in order to level up your character properly. So it's really unfortunate. Like, spending 2 hours on this game is not really enough. Like, for me to feel like I get a good session in, I gotta play like 4 hours. I feel like I got a decent amount of time into WoW. I played Counter-Strike tonight with the guys. Like, barely have any more time left. Anyway, so I think time is more and less, and there's just so many games. Like, dude, there's other games I can sink 1,000 hours into, like, easily. I mean, Faster Than Light, fucking $5 game, dude. I sunk thousands of hours into that fucking game. FTL is a great fucking game, but like, there's so many more games I want to play. I haven't played any new WoW. I haven't played like the last like 4 seasons. I haven't played since fucking Pandaria. Like as far as retail goes, like as soon as Pandaria came out, I'm like, this is fucking stupid, and I quit. Like I already logged in thousands of hours, even to Cataclysm. Cataclysm was okay. Anyway, let's get back to the video. I'm rambling. I'm ranting on.
The point where they had nothing to say. Well, I feel like the problem really is that I think their biggest weakness, I'm going to be totally honest, is the fact that they're making so many products. I think that the issue is that they're spread too thin and they're focused on too many different things at the same time. But that's the biggest
By
issue.
2018, Ubisoft was worth $24 a share. It was the highest price. It's still the highest price that they've ever been worth. And
keep in mind that the $24 a share is contextual around the company being only 1/5 in the American stock exchange. The other 4/5 are in the European stock exchange. So the actual value of that stock over there was like probably closer to $100.
That's the perfect reflection, whether you care about share prices or not. It's the perfect reflection of what the company was worth at the time. 10 times the value that they were before they released Assassin's Creed. They were swimming in cash. They were so successful. They were massive. But when you reach those peaks, there tends to be a trend that follows. They've been following that trend straight into the ground. As Ubisoft entered into 2018, the cracks in its previously successful formula began to show. While the company had relied on its major franchises to drive growth and maintain its position within the industry, the strategy began to falter. The initial decline of this period can largely be attributed to Ubisoft's over-reliance on its established franchises, a pattern that we've seen with many major publishers.
This is what happened with Blizzard. Like they had a number of games. They haven't released an original franchise since Overwatch, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no shit.
Like,
haven't
there
done
isn't
nothing
anything else that they've done. Like it's just been Diablo 4 and World of Warcraft.
We did StarCraft 2, but that's been 10 fucking years.
And also the phone game. Well, that's not new. That's Warcraft Rumble. Like, yeah, it's just a phone game, really. And I think it's a huge issue.
Still play fucking StarCraft 2.
Groundbreaking mechanics and narratives that defined
I love
Ubisoft's
StarCraft
titles were
3.
beginning to feel repetitive, leading to players feeling bored and fatigued with Ubisoft's design.
Yeah, no shit.
The third Assassin's Creed, I had already tapped out because I felt like I saw the writing on the wall. Every time I watched any of their reveals or trailers,
this is the way I feel about WoW. Like, what he's explaining right now is exactly the way I feel about WoW. Is that, like, because I've already played it so much, I know what the new one is going to be like, and I'm like, oh, I've already been there, I've already done that.
And yeah, I've done all this before. This over-reliance on existing franchises resulted in a slew of releases that, while still commercially viable, lacked the innovative spark that once defined the company. Assassin's Creed Odyssey in 2018 was a prime example of this issue. Despite it being a commercial success and receiving positive reviews, it didn't quite reach the heights of previous entries in the series. While it expanded upon RPG elements that were introduced in Assassin's Creed Origins, players and critics alike felt that the formula was becoming stale, with the vast majority of the open world and numerous side activities feeling more like a checklist rather than an engaging experience.
I think this is what's happened with a lot of open world games, is that somebody said that the comparison, like the difference between an open world game and a non-open world game, and it had like a guy and like a monster and a treasure chest, and the open world game were just like, they were just farther apart. It's like, okay, things just take longer to do. Okay. Wow. Amazing, right? I quit open world games, and I think also, like, a big problem is that once you use this formula so many times, like, I'm kind of this way with gacha games now, where, like, I played Star Rail, I had a lot of fun playing Star Rail, but, like, the fact that I can figure out everything that's happening in a gacha game when the whole thing is in Chinese, like, how the fuck, like, I can't read Chinese. How do I know this? Because every single one of them plays the exact same way. And I think that's a huge problem. It's like you have this established formula, and how many times are people going to want this formula?
It's far
I'm
short.
going to tell you a more contemporary example. Look at the response to Inotria. And Inotria, in a lot of ways,
I would
is
still
a good
be
game,
fine
right?
for
and
like another
despite
like 10
the type
minutes.
of game it is, there have been a lot of people who have expressed a degree of fatigue with Souls-like games. They feel like we've had too many of these, and they're looking for something new. And I think that's always what happens. And like for me, I love Souls-like games. I get it, but I can totally understand. I can see where they're coming from. It's very mid-Souls-like, worse than Lords of the Fallen. My point is that people see a Souls-like and they're like, oh, okay, it's another one of these. And I think the same thing happened with Ubisoft.
Propagated a shared perception between players and critics of more of the same. Ubisoft games were becoming predictable, drawn out, and boring. Far Cry New Dawn in 2019 suffered from the exact same issues. As a direct sequel to Far Cry 5, it attempted to build on the narrative and setting, but was seen as more of an expansion than a full-fledged new installment. The game was a commercial success to a degree, but it didn't match the sales or the impact of Far Cry 3 or Far Cry 4.
This is something like, this is kind of an abstract comparison, but I can see this happening with certain streamers, where like streamers will do certain things to like maintain a certain amount of viewer count. And I think that it's an instance where doing the safe option guarantees failure. Where, like, for example, some streamers don't want to only play, like, they only want to play, like, one type of game. And eventually that's going to stop working, and people will get tired of watching you playing that game. Like, there's a lot of WoW players that are like that. And I think it's a huge issue, because if you're not evolving, then you're falling behind. And I think that's true with anything. Like in any sort of a market, if you're not evolving your product and evolving what you're offering to consumers, other people will, and then consumers will move on.
Narrative was considered weaker, the post-apocalyptic setting, while a new direction for the series, didn't really resonate strongly with the player base. This underwhelming reception was indicative of a larger issue, the lack of fresh ideas and a growing formulaic approach to game design. Another notable release during this period was The Division.
It was about this time that I started hearing a lot of bad things about them too.
Yes.
In 2019. Now,
this fucking online game.
It had refined mechanics over the first game. The end game content was really engaging, and it was twice the size, if not larger, than the first game. However, despite its reception, it didn't meet Ubisoft's high sales expectations. The live service model that they had injected into the game arbitrarily,
I don't like the live service model.
Rainbow Six Siege did not effectively translate into the Division 2. This is partly due to
Division,
like, as other players are more invested in other live service games.
Yeah, you also had like Destiny 2 coming out at the time too.
The live service model just didn't work here. It felt generic. In a game where you're finding loot, and that's the gameplay loop, the last thing that you want to do is buy things to wear. You want to stand out for your achievements in the game, not how much you spent on loot boxes.
Well, that, I mean, like, fuck, man. Like, you could say that with every game. And the thing is, I think that a lot of people are kind of fatigued from, like, every video game being full of cosmetics and shit like this. And I get how, like, games have to make money and everything, right? I understand. But at the same time,
cosmetics,
like,
well, you have to earn.
Fatigue where, like, you just have all these cosmetics and all this bullshit.
Something you buy, but a lot of it you earn from, like,
made into being a live service
fucking
game.
raids and shit.
Does it really need to be like that? I think that the best example of this,
you actually feel like you get some reward from it.
That's probably the biggest example of a fuck up. But I think Division 2 might be a good example. I just don't know. I don't know enough about it.
This pattern of diminishing returns, poorly implemented monetization, and loss of connection with the players is a common issue for companies that heavily rely on their existing franchises. While sequels and spin-offs can capitalize on established fan bases, they also run the risk of alienating players by offering experiences that feel all too familiar, or injecting things into those experiences that make them, well, just something that players don't want to engage with whatsoever.
Yeah.
Ubisoft's reliance on its core franchises like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and the Tom Clancy games led to a perception that the company was simply reusing the same templates with minor tweaks and adding monetization.
Yeah,
that's what they were doing.
Of like the Ubisoft, like if Ubisoft made Dark Souls and it's got like a million menu items and there's like all these pop-ups and it's like check the store and everything, and then the Elden Ring one as well. Yeah, that's it.
Lack of innovation and growing similarities between their titles resulted in players being less excited about their new games, and they began to see Ubisoft games as formulaic in design.
And you see, like, what I'm talking about how people that are, like, streamers, it's the same thing.
Well,
is that, like,
if
you keep doing the exact same thing over and over, you might think that you're being safe, but all you're doing is, like, safely failing slowly. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. Like I tell myself, or I've told other people
I got
this
to
too.
wear this right
It's like
now.
if I'm not looking back at my content from 3 years ago and thinking it's bad, then I'm not winning, right? I'm not getting better. Yeah, they're postponing death. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Sprawling open worlds filled with repetitive tasks rather than unique and engaging experiences. And I think that's the most troubling thing when it comes to Ubisoft. It's their aversion to criticism. Get that away from me. And they're not alone in that, okay?
Well, they haven't
There's
been.
plenty of other
Just
studios,
check that can't
journalists
find.
that are out there that feel the same way. Don't listen to the gamers, those angry gamers. They don't know anything. And look,
It's actually crazy to me that like any group of like developers have like they've gaslighted themselves into thinking that games journalists speak for gamers. Like I think this is like a huge problem that like publishers and developers are listening to these journalists and these people that are writers. You're listening to them over your actual audience. You're listening to them. You know who you need to be listening to? The YouTube channel comments. You need to be listening to the reviews from users that are highly upvoted about the game that you released. Those are the people that actually matter. Some person that works at a company and the company has an important name, this is one person's opinion. They don't represent anybody other than themselves. And I think that what happens a lot is that these companies have like a very distorted view of what players want because they're getting that perspective from people that are not accurately representing the players. And I can offer you guys a very easy example. Do you feel like your needs and your desires as a player are accurately reflected by the way that different games companies cover games? Do you think that they're accurately reflected, right? Exactly. No. And so guess what the problem is when you make decisions based off of that? Everything goes to shit.
get it. Well, 9 times out of 10, players don't know how to voice their criticisms effectively. Oftentimes, they're just being mean when they say things.
There's a big
They're
disconnect.
still telling you that something's wrong with your games and you need to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But year after year, Ubisoft has completely failed to listen to any
Shogun?
criticism, whether that's coming from professional critics or the players. People have been saying for years how formulaic their design is, how scary predictable their games are. I know
see
that
if I can find it. Oh,
Go to
man.
Ashenvale.
If Ubisoft made Elden Ring. Man,
I haven't been there yet.
I can't wait, huh? Real exciting. You tell me, man? Yeah, a timeless masterpiece? Yeah, there you go.
I log into an open world Ubisoft game, it's just going to be a checklist simulator. Everybody still remembers when their developers took to Twitter to criticize Elden Ring of all games for its open world design, its quest design, and its UI.
I
How the fuck do you do that? That's the
the UI of Elden Ring. Oh my god.
It's kind of stupid. UI is
And the
fine.
thing is that there actually were criticisms with the UI. Like, for example, like key binding things with like your pouch is kind of annoying to do on keyboard. But like none of the people that play the games that are these developers like played the game enough to know that.
best game that we've had, one of the best games that
Yeah.
we've had in the last decade.
One of the best
Why
games,
wouldn't you
top-
look at a
top 10
game
games
like
of all
that,
time.
look at the success that it sees, and say, we need to internalize some of the things that this game did well, why players liked it, and then reflect that in our games going forward.
That's actually a really good point. Is that Star Wars
I
Outlaws
should be able to
came out
wreck
after
Ashenvale.
Elden Ring.
Yeah, that's right, because Ashenvale.
So this is like an open world game. And like
I
you could look
normally-
at
oh, I
Elden Ring
normally
and
start
take in
up top, go
examples and
south.
things that Elden Ring did, or for example, like Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild did, and you decided to take none of those examples.
That's how you make better products. You learn from your competition, learn from the games that do well, instead of looking at it, wanting to criticize it, and trying to make excuses why you think that your games are better.
Yeah.
Don't play Assassin's Creed instead. Fuck that. Look, Ubisoft had a bit of a resurgence in 2018 to 2019, and it looked like they were getting back on the horse. It looked like they were listening to player feedback, they were implementing in their games, it was making better games as a result, they were making a lot
Yeah.
of money, but that only lasted for so long.
Of course.
After a period of declining interest and fatigue, Ubisoft managed to stage a bit of a resurgence in 2019 and 2020 by...
Oh, big surprise. Wow. In December of 2020, Ubisoft was worth a lot of money. Oh, wow. That's crazy. I wonder why. What could possibly be the reason that the video game company during the pandemic that caused everybody to be inside their house was making a lot of money? What a coincidence.
Revisiting some of their core franchises with a renewed
Must
focus
have
and
been the flu.
experimenting with some
I guess
fresh
so.
ideas. Now, who thought something like that could actually have a positive impact on your sales? One of the most significant releases during this time was Assassin's Creed Valhalla in 2020. Now, this game was a commercial hit, selling more copies during its launch week than any other previous Assassin's Creed title. It received praise for its engaging narrative, improved combat mechanics, and rich historical setting. Valhalla revitalized interest in the series. It showed that Ubisoft could make changes. However, that isn't to say that players' complaints didn't remain the same. Many reviewers and players lamented over the length of the game, and while Valhalla introduced some innovative elements, territory arcs as well as the narrative just dragged on for far too long. The game's average completion time was over 60 hours, and 100% completion was nearing over 200 hours. No matter what you do, elements that were praised at the beginning of the game are going to start to feel repetitive, and it's just...
Is that a problem? Because I play a lot of games. I think it depends. I don't really like that, I really hate the idea that time spent playing the game should be a metric for success. I actually think that that is such a massively toxic, metric for deciding whether a game is good or not. It's so fucking toxic. There are so many games that I've played for 80 hours and I think are trash, and other games that I played for 8 hours that I think are amazing. And there's games for example, Black Myth Wukong was a pretty long game. Elden Ring was a pretty long game. Lies of P was a pretty long game. Those were great games. And then there's also short games that are bad too. It's so weird that I don't think that that's the way that you should judge a game. Dollar per hour, but that's not really true though, right? Because you're paying different amounts of money for different things. You're paying $1 an hour for a video game, but how much do you pay for a hooker? Well, if a video game feels like a hooker, then shouldn't you pay more for that time? I feel like that'd be pretty fair. So it's not about really the dollar per hour thing. It's the metric is very, I think you can use this. What? Well, I'm just being honest, right? I'm just being honest. That's all. And so I don't think that you should look at the time that you have to spend playing a game as being good or bad. Because I can guarantee you if the game felt fresh the same way that Elden Ring did, a lot of people's playthroughs of Elden Ring were probably longer than Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I would assume. And guess what? I bet people weren't complaining. The gameplay wasn't good enough for 60 hours. That's why. That's the issue. It's the gameplay. There it is.
Again, going to feel like a checklist of tasks. In the same year, they released Watch Dogs Legions, which attempted to innovate with its...
Oh, I never played that. I never liked it.
Control virtually any character in the entire game world. While the game received mixed reception due to some technical issues and a less than compelling story than we've seen from its predecessors.
This is, again, that's the problem. Is once a company gets really big, because you have to keep in mind, I don't know if he's going to bring this up, but after a company goes through one of these weird sexual harassment things, you see them really playing it super safe with a lot of themes in their stories. And I think this happened with Ubisoft, and it also happened with Blizzard. So you have companies like Blizzard that for example, so they have this massive sexual harassment lawsuit, right? And then after that, they're going to release Dragonflight, where the main character is a girl in a chainmail bikini with Alex Straza. No, of course not. So they redesigned her. So the problem is that now, again, the game is being limited and it's being changed and it's being artificially handicapped for real-world reasons. And I think that Ubisoft had the same type of issue happen at their offices. And because of that, now you're getting a watered-down, neutered version of the games. Because the company doesn't want to take risks like that because it could look bad for them, socially. And again, nobody cares about that. That's what's so crazy. And actually, that's not true. You know who cares about it? Journalists care about it. Do players care? No. If you're ever listening to anybody other than actual players, you're a fucking idiot. I'm sorry, you are a fucking moron. only listen to what players tell you.
It
They're
sold
scared of the press,
relatively
yeah.
well. And it showed that the company was willing to take some risks and explore some new concepts with existing franchises. Immortals Phoenix Rising in 2020 was another one of those key releases that showed Ubisoft had a willingness to experiment and even come out with some new IPs. The game offered a vibrant and humorous take on Greek mythology combined with open world exploration and puzzle solving and action combat.
didn't play this.
There were a lot of folks that liked this game, and in some cases, people liked it even more than Breath of the Wild at the time. Though it didn't reach the commercial heights of Assassin's Creed or Far Cry, it showed that Ubisoft could still deliver a fresh and enjoyable experience outside of their established franchises.
Am I crazy to think that that gameplay that I just saw looked very painful? Like, I don't know why. It's like, it's so astonishing for me to see people look at games like that and see it and not think that it's immediately garbage. Like, I have a very high, I guess maybe I have a very high standard for this. But, like, the quality of game, like, the minute-to-minute, like, the way that, like, games, like, react, co-love the game, yeah, I can't like games that play badly. I just can't do it.
However, I think the most important thing to keep in mind during this period of time and this surge of growth at Ubisoft, and the biggest boon to Ubisoft at the time, as well as many other developers as well, is that well, there was a pandemic and lockdown that was driving an increase in game sales and player engagement.
Exactly.
With people spending more time at home, the demand for games surged. Ubisoft benefited from this greatly as their established franchises and live service games offered an extensive amount of content for players to explore. Rainbow Six Siege saw massive growth during this period, with the player base growing to over 70 million players by the end of 2021.
Well, it's also, I'm pretty sure Rainbow Six Siege, there's not a lot of other games like Rainbow Six Siege. So, like, they're competing in a market without really a lot of other, like, competitors, right? I mean, like, you could say, like, abstractly, like, Overwatch is like that, but not really in terms of, like, having different heroes and stuff and, like, different types of characters. But, like, no, it's not like Rainbow Six at all. So, yeah, I think that's also another reason. Is, like, they've got this market pretty much locked down.
Continued support through regular updates, new operators, and seasonal events helped keep that community engaged and invested even today. Any game studio that had a game that came out or was ready to release right around the time of lockdowns saw massive growth and massive profits. Go figure.
Yep.
But as we've learned, that growth is inorganic and unsustainable, and none of them had been able to maintain it. So with that said, yeah, of course, Ubisoft was going to see a little bit of growth
I
there.
think there was also, like, you have to keep in mind that, like, in the late 2010s, like 2017, 18, and 19, there is, like, an artificial, like, expectation that tech companies would just keep growing unsustainably. Because this was back still whenever social media was growing 20% every single year. But what I think happened with COVID is that COVID kind of accelerated that growth. Like, I don't even think that COVID necessarily artificially, like, changed the growth, but they just made it happen faster. So, like, for example, something that probably should have happened over 10 years because of COVID happened in 2 years, which is the amount of people that were, like, on the internet, on social media, etc.
Right.
Because I feel like during COVID, how many of you guys knew somebody or know somebody who wasn't really connected online and, like, spending a lot of time online, and then COVID changed that? It was a catalyst, right? COVID basically, it was like a speed run of the next 10 years. But, like, now that those 10 years have occurred, like, video games have kind of reached to a certain degree a saturation point. Social media has reached to a certain degree a saturation point where everybody that's going to have Facebook has Facebook, and everybody who doesn't have Facebook chooses not to have Facebook. And I think that's the big issue too.
They definitely evolved a little bit past some of their game design issues.
You're just growing
unsustainably.
unsustainably.
Those same criticisms were still there regardless of the years that had gone by. And one of the other problems that Ubisoft has is the minute that they see something work, they will hammer it until the wheels fall off.
Yeah.
They will exhaust you as fast as they possibly can because they just want to try to make as much money as fast as they possibly can rather than paying attention to what the longevity of that game would look like, how much more money you could make if the game lived longer. But they just love killing games. When you have an entire industry that is criticizing your games, where in a lot of cases you can take some of these reviews for some of their games, layer them on top of each other, and it looks like they're reviewing the exact same game. When you have your players that are complaining about your monetized...
I gotta say that that's probably an issue also with the game journalism. I think it's a bit of a self-report that a lot of the games journalists talk about how AI can't make anything new. All it can do is repost existing things, but they're simultaneously afraid of AI taking their job. Well, what does that say about your articles?
Practices.
It's just
and
me.
your prices,
Hey.
you don't then go and just make all those things worse. You don't just keep doing the exact same thing. You don't inject. How do you put XP boost in a single player game? What are you doing? Why? What is this?
What was the game that did that? I forgot which game that was. Was it Valhalla? Shadows of War? I don't remember. Assassin's Creed Odyssey? Yeah. There is no value that having a store adds to a player in a single player game, or really almost in any game. But here's the problem that a lot of people don't understand, is that when you have systems like that in games, now the game is designed around making you want to buy an experience boost, which is a huge fucking problem.
Completely defeats the purpose of playing games like this in the first place. We know that all you're doing is just expanding the content as far as you possibly can to make it unrealistic for casual players to play without spending money.
Mm-hmm.
It's transparent. That's the worst part about them. They are transparent greed manifest. You can see everything they do, and they think that they're being sneaky about it. What are you talking about? Get comfortable with not buying your games. I know what you mean by that. I know the implications of what you're talking about. Because that means that you're going to try to make it where we can't buy games.
Well, it's that they want to control the ownership of it, and they want to have another metric of control. That's the reason why.
Make us a little bit more comfortable with it in the future, right?
Yeah.
Well, don't worry about it. We're all pretty comfortable with not buying your games. Which brings us to the rapid decline of Ubisoft over the past few years, with release after release failing to deliver on expectations while doing nothing to compete with recent shifts in the market. To me, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint in 2019 encapsulates everything that's wrong with modern Ubisoft. It was buggy, the writing was awful, it was repetitive and generic, over-bloated and over-monetized. They monetized XP gains. They put vehicles and skins that had no business being in the game into the game and destroyed any sense of immersion in a largely single-player experience. Like every other open-world game from Ubisoft, even still today, they haphazardly put in RPG mechanics like varied loot, skill trees, and more. Mechanics that are only there to extend the player's time in the game. Putting these elements...
I cannot agree with this more. I think that so many games overcomplicate the experience in a way that doesn't add anything to the player's experience of the game. You're not making the game any better. You're not improving the product. You're just adding in more hoops for the player to jump through in the hopes that it will keep them playing the game longer. Like, I don't know about you guys, but anytime that I'm playing a new one of these games and I loot something and it says 1 out of 250, I'm like, it's just, are you fucking kidding me?
In there as a means to gatekeep players from progressing the story or taking on certain enemies. I think SkillUp said it best when he was reviewing Breakpoint, saying, why the fuck is this in the game? Why is it so poorly implemented? And why is it in...
Well, they're doing it. The problem is that, this is a rhetorical question. Everybody knows why this is in the game.
Oh man, I'm not gonna be able to finish it all tonight.
Experience with this boost, valid forever on all your save games.
What the fuck?
This sucks. Because I guarantee you that probably the experience acquisition method, or the way that you gain advantages through experience, is counterbalanced to make this more appealing.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. Just cheat, what the fuck? Yeah.
And why is it in every game in their portfolio? This sort of design philosophy has proliferated through just about every single game that they make. And what makes matters worse for Ubisoft, and I think this is the one thing that the vast majority of people are overlooking here, it's what's killing their sales. It's the increase in competition from other publishers with new successful IPs. Games
it's also a big reason is too that you have indie development studios that are able to make games that are
really good games,
scope and a higher quality now. So whereas before they only had maybe a half a dozen studios or a dozen studios to compete against, Now they have way more studios to compete against. So you have other games that they're being compared against, and it's like, okay, well, you made this game. Well, why is it that, you know, like, I don't just play this smaller game that's cheaper? It's like, I think a good example is like the Prince of Persia game. So Prince of Persia, I think it was like, I don't remember what it was. It was a recent like side score Prince of Persia game. Why would somebody spend $50 or $40 on a
I'll be right back, guys.
Prince of Persia side scroller game when Blasphemous 2 and 1 are way less money and they're basically the same experience. So that's another example of like an indie game that's coming out that's just edging them out of the market, or Hollow Knight or something like that. And whereas before in the 2000s and like the early 2010s, they had this basically de facto monopoly because it was harder to go to market with a game as an indie developer. But now you have so many different types of tools for guerrilla marketing and different ways that companies can get their game out there. Like, for example, Core Keeper, look at that game. That game did really well. It came out of nowhere. Well, not really out of nowhere, but it was made by an indie studio. And like another Crab's Treasure is another good example of that. So PoE versus Diablo 4, yeah, exactly, right? And a lot of these games that are made by these smaller studios end up being better experiences. And that's the reason. And so now they have to compete with more people, and so the products have to be even better. And they're just not, they're not meeting the mark.
Elden Ring and Genshin Impact have captured player interest. Elden Ring's open world design and exploration set a new benchmark for the genre, while Genshin Impact offers a free-to-play model in an open world game with high production values, and it's shaking up players' expectations. Games like these force players to compare similarities, and when you contrast Ubisoft games...
Here's one big factor. Elden Ring and Genshin Impact play well. I cannot emphasize this enough. Star Wars Outlaws does not play well. It doesn't work well. It doesn't, like the way the characters move, you don't fully feel like you're in control of the character. It's not very good. That matters more than basically fucking anything. So yeah, that's another big reason.
Games with the experiences that players have had access to over the past few years, it's no wonder why people aren't playing their games.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we were discussing previously. Ubisoft's core issue is their inability to change and recognize trends. Their loss in quality and generic monetization. Look at their first quadruple A game ever made, Skull and Bones.
This was crazy. I still can't believe they made this. Really, like this is, it's insane.
$1 live service title in development for 11 years, costing over $200 million.
In development for 11 years? Oh my God. How? That's insane. That should be illegal.
$1 million, only to release a more boring version of Assassin's Creed Black Flag with less than 700 concurrent players on Steam.
Well, I think that actually the game is more popular now on Steam. Let me see if I can compare it. That was for something else. Skull and Bones. I think the game is doing better now. Oh. Anyway.
To make a more consumable version of Assassin's Creed with Mirage, charging $50 for a less than 15-hour game that did nothing to evolve the franchise. They finally returned to Prince of Persia with The Lost Crown. They made an awesome game. It was really innovative. I actually enjoyed it, but they charged $40 for a Metroidvania game in a market where those games cost a fourth of the price.
This guy watches my stream. That's exactly what I fucking said. That's exactly it. The Lost Crown is great. It was. And they did have a, like, they made one innovation that I can think of, which is being able to screenshot things in the different world so you can remember them for later. I don't know about another Metroidvania game that had that before The Lost Crown. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point. It is. It absolutely is. Like, that's why I made it. But, like, anyway, like, he's right, though, is that, yeah, you're competing in a market with other games that are, and also Prince of Persia, you had, like, a 3-day, like, early access thing. And this is, like, a problem with, like, perception, is that when you're going to see a lot of streamers and people talking about the game, it's going to be on the early access day. So the early access for the game was, like, $50 or $60. It was insane. Who the fuck is going to spend that much money on a Metroidvania game? And I have no problem with it. I don't care. But the audience perception is that Metroidvania games are of a lower quality. That's just the way that people see things.
Star Wars Outlaws, a game for all intents and purposes, should have been an easy home run, but ultimately showcases how dire the situation is at Ubisoft. Not only...
This game gave me an existential crisis. Like, I was so upset at the end of this game. I was shook, bro. Like, I remember at the end of this, I just went out into my backyard and I sat on the porch for like 30 minutes. Just doing nothing. You beat the game? No, the game beat me.
Does the game suffer from quality issues, unattractive character designs, bugs, repetitiveness, and inconsistencies, but in an attempt to remove some of their open world bloat, you come to realize just how those elements, once they're removed, the game is really just held together by duct tape. Eurogamer in their review said something really interesting, saying that the problem with Star Wars Outlaws, however, isn't that it adheres too closely to the development approach akin to hoarding, but that it does the opposite, stripping away years of accumulated video game clutter. Admirably, Outlaws does this quite aggressively, Kessel Sabak aside. But in doing so, it reveals an integral issue. Ubisoft open world games are not only fun because of their formula, they are their formula. To strip away isn't to peel off some old wallpaper to reveal the original brickwork, it's lifting up the carpet to find a whacking great hole in the ground.
I cannot disagree more. Every single thing about that game was bad. The graphics were bad. The combat was bad. The story was bad. The itemization was bad. The, like, upgrades you can get were bad. Every single thing about it was bad. It is crazy, like, the open world formula is why it would have been good. There's no way. The enemy AI, but it wasn't bad. The enemy AI was retarded. It was insane. They can be looking at you. Seems clear over here. All right, resuming NPC movement. Oops, I've been assassinated. The game looks AI. It's just terrible. It was so IGN 7 out of 10. As I said, guys, because of those reviews, that's what's actually gotten me to, like, play a lot of new games. Is because I will see reviews for games that I think are complete garbage. And I'm like, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to actually play through this game and actually give it a real score. Higher review than Space Marine 2, by the way. It's crazy. It's funny because Mirage is decent. Outlaws couldn't replicate it. That's how you do it. It's just embarrassing.
In the ground, meaning that their games are hollow, and I think that that's a fitting description. From my perspective as a player, Ubisoft has become synonymous with generic games that are overpriced, overmonetized, and overly repetitive.
I'm going to say again, I disagree. I wish that it was generic. I wish so much that it was generic. If you had just done a generic game, it would have at least been like a 6 or a 7, you know? Like, How do you do that? I wish we had a generic. In TGS, Tokyo Game Show, it's like actually a little bit about 2 hours or so. It's actually pretty soon.
Side of the Division 1 and 2, I've had no interest whatsoever in playing any of their games because I've already played them years ago, and playing the next game isn't going to be any different.
That is why I'm not playing WoW. That right there, that's the reason. Like that's I don't know. Do any of you guys feel the same way? Like that's how I feel, at least, right? Does it not be playing Division 3? Yeah. That's where I'm at.
Same games pushed out the door for profit that lack any creativity or originality. Now we look at their next release, Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game criticized well before its release because, other than legacy media, everyone else can see the elephant in the room. An Assassin's Creed game finally set in Japan, a setting that is so great for a game with this kind of theme, only to include a tokenized representation of a character with vague at best historical relevance backed by a hip-hop soundtrack and combat. Why is it that representation to these people means hip-hop soundtracks or a character wearing Jordans whose power is that they run fast?
Because there are a bunch of liberal white women that don't know any black people. And so they think that they're like some like different like type of animal or something. It's like, well, this is their culture. They don't know any black people. Like, you look at the development studios for these games, it's full of a bunch of white people. That's the reason why. It's because they don't know any black people. They don't know how to interact with them. Sheltered white dudes? Yeah, so look, they're racist. Exactly. It's crazy how it happens. They lock their cars when a black person gets closer than 50 feet. Yeah, they go down the bad part of town. They're locking their doors. Oh shit! No, ooh, what's this here? It's the blind side effect. Yeah, it's crazy. It's so weird, bro. Like, ultimate racist, aristocratic racists. No, they're not aristocratic. Okay, they're just performative. It's crazy how whenever you actually take a step back and you look at it, it's like. It's such an obvious caricature, but these people don't realize it.
I'll be honest, I think that a lot of the dialogue surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows are issues that players would largely ignore if they knew that Assassin's Creed, that this game, was going to be incredible.
I've said this before. Yeah, I hope he says it. Yasuke will not even be in the top 10 problems of this game when it comes out. Please realize that when this game releases, it's not even going to be in the top 10.
Over the years, players have come to expect less and less from Ubisoft games. Why are investors so concerned? Why are they jumping ship before one of the largest releases of Ubisoft in recent memory? Well, why don't you tell me why anyone would want to play Assassin's Creed Shadows when they have far better Eastern-themed
YouTube content? I'm going to play it. Very simple, actually. I'm going to play it so I can make a video about it. And then I'm going to have people watch the video. That's the plan. Yeah.
Alternatives that without a doubt have better combat, better environments, higher quality, and better storytelling.
Yeah.
Without the need to be able to make a statement or press their morals against an audience.
I think that's a really big component that a lot of people... I feel like the way that...
Alright guys, I'm going to have to do like part 2 on this one. I'm getting tired and I'm ready to go to bed. It's 6 a.m. I gotta wake up the sun. But yeah, I'll try to be on. If you are watching this video, I'm going to try to be on between like 4 or 6 in the morning streaming. And now the days I'll definitely do it probably be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or possibly Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I think I want to just do this thing like 3 to 4 days a week, and have a schedule to actually upload some videos and content and stuff. But yeah, I'll start uploading more. But I think that's the hours I'm going to start. This is Central Standard Time, of course, so start at around 4 in the morning. All right. Y'all have a wonderful night. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to sleep.